Hi, Kim Rayner here from All About Spirits Life After Cancer, and I want to welcome you to episode 34 of Life After Cancer. And you know, when we're diagnosed with cancer, it throws us a curveball. It impacts every aspect of our lives, our spiritual life, our physical life. It impacts our intuition. It is filled with changes. It impacts our emotions and our social life. And I created Life After Cancer because I struggled with life after cancer and actually navigating what I call the spices of life, those 6 things. So today's episode is episode 54, and it's called Having Cancer is Like Having 2 Lives at Once. And this topic was created based on kind of the work of Catherine Russell Rich. She wrote a book called The Red Devil, a memoir about beating the odds. And in that book, she talks about living in 2 time zones at once. And I got that concept really, really well. But for me, it didn't really feel like 2 time zones as much as it felt like 2 lives. On one hand, I was doing the chop wood, carry water of life, where I was navigating school and my home life and trying to take care of laundry and doing the dishes and making sure Nick was fed and handling my chemistry exam and going to work and being sure I was on time for all of those things and just showing up in life in general. And at the same time, I was always also facing these really hard questions, these life and death kind of questions, like, okay, if I don't make it through this, who's going to be there for Nick? Who's going to take care of my cats? What's my relationship with God? What do I feel about my mortality? How do I feel about spirituality? What is all of that stuff for me? So there was these 2 lives that were going on, and I struggled. I struggled with trying to navigate through both of them. So that's really what today's episode is about. And let's see. At best, when I was navigating through this process, it was hard. It was really hard to try and keep myself focused on what I was supposed to be focused on when I was supposed to be focused on it. And at its worst, it was crazy making. I had all I could do to function. So today's episode, I'm going to try and bring those 2 worlds together, and I'm going to do it in the context of both the survivor and the person supporting the survivor. And why I'm doing that is because I know that this isn't exclusive to the cancer survivor. I experienced this when my dad had his stroke, and when he had kidney failure, and then when he went into hospice. All of those situations created an impact on me as his caregiver as well. So I thought I would look at these processes from both aspects. And let's see. So from the survivor's end, the first thing I'll talk about is to expect change. And when I talk about expecting change, it's like you are not going to be able to do life the way you were doing life. If you were a regular person at the gym, you might find it hard getting to the gym. If you were working 40 to 50 hours a week, you might find that difficult. If you were in a factory, you might find that difficult. If you were used to taking care of the house and doing the laundry and doing all of the cooking and the cleaning, right? You might find that difficult. So expect that there's going to be change. And as the support person or the caregiver, expect that there's going to be change, right? So if you have a person that you've been depending on to be able to do all of this stuff, they might not be able to do that anymore. And you might be asked to step in, or you might need to hire somebody to help you with some of the things that they used to take responsibility for. So expect change. The second thing on my list is, as a survivor, give yourself a break, and again, it has to do with releasing your expectations. If you need help with things, ask people for help. There are lots of people that are willing to help. There's agencies that are willing to help, but they can't help if they don't know that you need it. So give yourself permission to be vulnerable and to ask for that help. Let people know the truth about what's going on for you. Tell them if you're having a hard time keeping up, if you're having a hard time keeping track, if you're having a hard time navigating some aspect of your journey. Let people know that. They can't participate and help if you don't let them in. On the caregiver's end, or the employer's end, or the family, friend, lover's end, right? Give your person space and time. If they need time to go to doctor's appointments, you're the employer, give them the space and time to do that. If they need rides getting to follow-up appointments, see if you can help navigate or arrange those rides. If they need time to recover after surgery or chemo, creating the time and space for that to happen is helpful. The next thing on my list, I don't know if you can hear the geese or not, but this is a great time of year in Wisconsin. I love it. They are definitely moving. Okay, so the next thing on my list is to find your pattern as the patient. I know that I had chemo on Thursdays. I got there at about 7:30 or 8 o'clock on Thursday morning, and my chemo lasted until about 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night. They gave me a ton of steroids, and those steroids kept me awake, so I did not sleep on Thursday nights. That meant that I was pretty emotional and out of sorts on Fridays, so I made sure that I didn't schedule things on Fridays that I needed to be composed or calm, cool, collected with. I didn't do things that were going to be physically exhausting or tiring for me. I paid my bills on Thursday night in the middle of the night because I was awake, and that seemed like a logical time to do that. So giving permission to find my pattern and honor that pattern was really helpful for me. And that's the same on the caregiver or the support person's end. If your person has a pattern, honor that pattern. And I can talk about that in the context of my dad and his stroke. He had dialysis on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. That meant that he was exhausted on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday nights. So if we needed to go shopping or we needed to do, something, we didn't plan that on those days. I was respectful of him and of the process. So if you're supporting someone going through the journey, finding their patterns and honoring it can be helpful. Let's see, on the survivor's end, take somebody with you to your doctor's appointments. When we get into doctor's offices, so many times what we hear is blah, 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 blah. And the doctor might be giving us valuable information that we need. They might be telling us about, treatments that are available or things we can do to help with our symptoms. And sometimes we're just not able to hear that information coming from the doctor. So really listening to having somebody come with you to be able to walk through the process and take notes on your behalf can be really helpful. If you are the person supporting the person and taking the notes, take the notes the way the person needs to hear them. If you are a person who is really detail-oriented and you need lots of notes, go ahead and take your lots of notes. But if your survivor, the person that you're supporting, doesn't like a lot of detail, don't share all of those details with them. Just give them as much as they're interested in hearing about. And I can talk about that in the context of dealing with my mom and her health issues. My mom's not a detail person, and I want to know every little bitty thing that's going on because I like to be prepared. So taking notes and sharing the information in the way that your survivor wants to be supported in that process is really helpful. And recognizing, that you get to honor both of you in the process. One way isn't right, one way isn't wrong. It's just a difference in the way that we navigate and deal with things. Let's see. The next thing on my list, and this is again part of the chop wood, carry water stuff. Cancer is overwhelming, and if we have, family responsibilities or work responsibilities or obligations that we're responsible for, a lot of times as survivors, we feel guilty about not being able to meet those obligations, about not being able to spend time with the kids, about not being able to get all of our work done. Guilt is a useless emotion when it comes to navigating cancer and most other things. It serves no purpose. It's not helpful. All it really does is make us feel crummy about ourselves and about what's going on. So my invitation to you is, rather than feeling guilty, find things that you can do to compensate or to make up for what you're feeling guilty about. Like, let's say you're used to spending time with the kids playing. Okay, maybe you don't have the energy to play, but what would it be like to say, hey, how about if we read together? Maybe they crawl up on your lap and you read to them for a while, and Maybe they read to you for a while. And what a great way to share some time and to spend some time together. So there's ways to navigate that stuff. Finding ways to be creative is helpful. If you're supporting the person who's got cancer and going through the treatment process, maybe there's things that you can do. Maybe you can carve out special time with the kids to say, you know what, I get that this is really hard for you too. So how about if we say Monday nights are going to be our night to go get a milkshake, or we're going to go swimming, or we're going to go to the mall and shop for a little bit, to find something special to pull both of you out of the situation, or all of you out of the situation, so you have some time to rebuild and regroup and regenerate. I mean, we really need to do that. And then also, as the caregiver, it's really, really important that you take time for yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And if you don't take time for yourself, nobody is going to make the time for you. There is no shame in saying, man, I just got to get out of here. I have to stop for a while. I can't be all of this. I love you, but I can't be all of this. So making sure that you're carving out the time to take for yourself is really important. The next thing on my list was the finances, right? Finances can be a concern for people. And I know they certainly were for me. Talk to your medical team as the patient. Talk to your medical team. There may be resources available to you that you have no idea of. I know that when I was going through my chemo, my insurance didn't cover chemotherapy. And my oncologist, when I started talking to them about, okay, I can't afford to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I can't. And he said, there's scholarship programs available through the hospital. There were programs available through the drug companies, and there was help available for me. So if people don't know that you're struggling with something, they can't help you. So make sure that you're letting people know. I know the American Cancer Society, sometimes people struggle with rides. They have a great program where they actually help people get transportation to and from treatment. And that's a great resource. So if you're struggling, ask for help. If you are a supporter or a caregiver and you can't offer the support that they need, it's okay. You don't have to be everything for them the whole way through this process. It's okay for you to ask for help too. If you're an employer, right, you might want to give them a lighter duty while they're going through their treatment. That might be something that's helpful to them. You might want to see if you can get coworkers to pitch in and help with some of their work so they don't feel so overwhelmed by it. So there's things in every phase of our life that we can do. Cutting back the caregiver's hours or firing the caregiver because their partner or spouse or loved one is going through cancer treatment is not helpful. Cancer is expensive and not everything is covered by insurance. It doesn't cover our transportation. It doesn't cover, if we need help cleaning or we need extra child care. Our insurance doesn't cover that if we even have insurance. So being sensitive to that you're patient, if you're employing the patient or the people who are supporting the patient, they might need some extra help during that time frame. So digging deep and finding some compassion is really helpful for them. So that takes care of kind of the chop wood, carry water of life things that I talked about in the beginning. And then there's the second half, right, which is the hard questions, the questions that say, who's going to be there for Nick? What does that mean? Nick is the child of a single mom, right? His dad is certainly going to be there, but they live a long distance away. So who's going to be there to support him? How do I start dealing with my own fear around that and then creating space for him? One of the things they told me, and I've said it before, get your affairs in order. At 48 years old, I don't even know what that means, get my affairs in order. How do I navigate that stuff? And who do I talk to about that stuff? Do I believe in God? I had a pretty healthy spiritual practice when I walked into the beginning of my cancer journey. And thank God for that, because I needed that spiritual practice to get through the process. What I know today is that those kind of questions and you probably have other ones, and I had a lot more of them. Those kind of questions are really personal in nature, and nobody can tell you how to answer those questions for yourself. Nobody could tell me what to do to help my son walk through this process, right? That's stuff that I needed to find out. I needed to find the answers from within myself or my relationship with God as I understand God. But I didn't have to do the searching part alone. And that can sometimes be a dichotomy for us, right? I feel like I have these questions and I need to figure this out myself. And yeah, I may have to answer the questions with my own heartfelt, in my heart answers. But that doesn't mean that I have to do the journey part of that alone. That doesn't mean I can't talk to other people about it. It doesn't mean that I can't invite people in to my process and my fear. I didn't have to face that alone, even though a lot of times I set myself up to have to face it alone. I know today that I didn't have to. And you don't have to either. So if you don't have people in your life that you can talk to about that, you can certainly, reach out to me, and I'm happy to have conversation with you about that kind of stuff. I know that I get lots of private feedback from people about the show. I get private messages from people, and I really appreciate those. I'd really love for these to start dialogues among you guys, among the community, so we can support each other and we can support caring about each other. So I'd love to hear how you guys navigated, how you dealt with the challenges that you experienced in balancing the two lives that we live, or the two time zones that we spend our time in when we're going through treatment, and just trying to navigate our regular life. So if you have a story to share, I'd love you to put that in the comments. That would be wonderful, and to get some dialogue going. I'm also going to remind you that I have my Project 1000 Cancer Survivor Stories, where I'm collecting the stories of 1000 cancer survivors for my blog, which is on my new website, which is actually up and running now at allaboutspirit.com. You can go check it out there. And I have 4 of the stories I've collected so far on there, and I'll be posting new stories on a regular basis. So if you'd like to be a contributor to the Survivor Diaries, I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. Or you can certainly send me your story at 1000 Cancer Survivor Stories at allaboutspirit.com. And let's see. I think that that's probably it for today. So if this episode was helpful for you, if you found something that you can use or that you think someone else could use, I hope that you share that information with someone, and I look forward to talking with you next week. And until then, I hope life treats you well. Make it a great day.